Hey everybody, welcome back to Man's Advice Forum. I'm the Man. In this video, I'm going to answer all your questions that I posted on the Ask Me Anything video that I posted 2 days ago, 3 days ago, I don't know, 5 days ago. All right, so we have two questions, one by Chris Regan, the other by Jim Grimes. So first question by Chris Regan. When looking at societal problems, the average person in the 70s, do you mean like back in the 1970s or in their 70s? So the average person in the 70s would watch 4 hours of TV a day. Fast food has become a huge thing. The problem described by John Taylor Gatto of having networks over communities still exists, and nihilism is on the rise. But it looks like we have to lock down in order to protect ourselves against the virus with a mortality rate of 1%, while millions are left unemployed. There was sarcasm at the end of the former sentence, but to me, the pandemic hasn't been about health, since if it was, there would be a movement to start eating healthy, getting enough sleep, and forming communities. But the year showed that if enough members of the media, scientists, and experts, with a few letters slapped by their name, say we need a lockdown, that will convince most people. I don't have a question, but just ask for any thoughts on modern society. Yeah, I know that, Chris. So, Chris, I know that you kind of just recently became an adult. And I think what you're experiencing, the feelings that you're experiencing, is the same ones that I experienced, like when I turned like 18, 19, 20, and probably throughout my mid 20s as well, where it's just this constant disappointment over and over again. And it seems like everyone has fucking lost their minds. And this was like 15 years ago. You know what I'm saying? And so if it was 15 years ago, it was bad back then. Think of how bad it is right now. And I think all the things that you see in society is what you would call the tipping point. Kind of like how like houses or cars, you have to maintain them. I think society has to be maintained also, right? So if you don't do an oil change in a car, it's going to break down. If you don't do maintenance on a house, like, if let's say like you find a leak and you don't call a plumber, that's going to fucking destroy the house with mold, right? So these little things that people just may or may not see, but they're kind of trained to they train themselves to not care. There's eventually going to be a tipping point where all the problems that they didn't really want to resolve, and they didn't want to kind of have a foresight to just say, hey, we got to fix these little problems in order to maintain our society, is the reason why our society is at the tipping point. Now, I always pray that society doesn't collapse. And in fact, I listen to a lot of podcasts where it's like, society's going to collapse. Society's going to collapse. We're going to be in a civil war. And it may or may not be true. I hope it's not true, but it may or may not be true. But back to my point. My point is that once I entered adulthood from like 18, 19, I was just shocked just how stupid most adults were. And I just could not believe it, right? And, the fact that I just couldn't have like a normal conversation, I couldn't even joke around, it really made me think like I've entered this like bizarre world, because when I was in high school, I used to be able to joke around with my friends and hang out. And it just seems like nobody wants to make time for each other. Nobody cares about each other. Nobody wants to maintain their relationships and care for one another. And I think that's why I grew depressed. Straight gonna be honest with you. That's why I think I grew depressed in my like late 20s, because or not late 20s, late teens, because it's just like I want to be part of a community, and I want to be part of something that matters, not just to me but to everybody else. And it seems like we live in this society where people just want to do things that matter to them, and they want to take no part in your life, right? And it's kind of like then they wonder why society is like crumbling around them. Because again, human beings were made to be tribal, right? And we kind of see this in like little subcultures, like, with like, if you have a certain hobby, then you hang out with people with that hobby, or you hang out in like forums or Discord chats or whatever. And I just think human beings were just meant to be tribal. And in that tribe, every single person had a role that was important for the maintenance of the tribe. Maybe you have a couple people here and there responsible for hunting and cooking the food, right? And then once they hunt and cook the food, or not hunted the food and bring it back to the tribe, then you have maybe a couple members inside the tribe that would cook the food, right? And then do other things. I mean, you assign like 2 or 3 people to make make clothes within the society so that you don't freeze in the winter. And I think back then, even though people may have died earlier, I think they died in peace because they led a more fulfilling life because they knew what their role is, right? So they had a career that lasted 20, 30 years, and they could retire and they could see their children grow. Whereas nowadays, it's just like we don't even know what a career is anymore. You know what I'm saying? And we don't have defined roles. We don't know our tribe. Who's our tribe? When I go out and hunt my bacon or hunt for food, when I come back from my hunting, who's going to be the person in my tribe who's going to help me cook the food? Because obviously I'm going to work to bring home bacon. Who's going to cook the bacon, right? And that's what a tribe is. It's a close-knit community where people understand their roles and they help each other, right? And that's really what's missing from modern society, and people don't really seem to think that's important at all. And then they're just like wondering, why is society crumbling, right? Like everything has to be maintained. Everything from cars to real estate to relationships. It's important to build it, and then you have to maintain it. And that's everything. And that's just the problem with modern society is there's no real concept of maintenance within the general public. Maybe within some smart people and some huge business owners and people who are rich, they understand the concept of maintenance, but most people do not. And it's really sad. It's really sad. And I know I'm just rambling, and I think you just want to hear me ramble because you don't really have a specific question. But that's just how I view modern society, right? I try to, when I see young people and there's a so-called global pandemic and they're still focused on their college applications rather than, helping their local communities, strengthening the bonds between the people that they know, they still have that lame mindset where it's just all about me. And then people are going to wonder, why is society collapsing, right? Or why is society on the brink? And now I always hope that and pray that society doesn't collapse. But for the most of my adult life, when I realized nobody really cares about each other, and bad customer service is really common, and people don't respond to their phone calls and emails, I get that we live in a failing society, but at the same time, I also said to myself, okay, I'm going to be the example for other people. So even if nobody listens to me and people think I'm a fucking moron or an idiot, at least I know I'm doing my part, right? And you have to do your part too. Yes, you can judge other people for sucking because I do that all the time. But I think I'm at the stage of my life, I just don't have time to judge people anymore because I got work to do. I got to cook my own food. I got, people tell me that, yeah, I'm in my mid-30s, but I look like I'm in my 20s, right? And then, they find out what I do. I tell them about the juicing. They don't listen to it, and they do their own thing. But hey, I'm doing my best. I'm doing my thing, and people can see the results. But unfortunately, because most people are in autopilot mode, they don't even really think about their day-to-day lives because they're fucking. I don't want to say lazy, but I do judge them. But at the same time, now that I'm getting older, you really feel like time passing you by so fast that you don't really just have no time to kind of waste on people anymore. But I think if I could do it over again. Number one, when I was 18, I would have been much more vigilant and demanding what I wanted. And I would have realized that if nobody cared for me, then I have to, fight for what I want, right? But the thing is, the society just kind of lulls you into sleep and saying, hey, if you follow the rules, and go to school and go to college, then everything will be okay. But then, that's not the case at all, because if you look at the statistics, I think like 69 or 60 something % of college students have had a severe mental breakdown. So, what are we doing with our young people, and why don't we care? And why don't the young people care? That's what I don't understand. So just my thoughts. Next question by Jim Graham. I know this is around a month ago, but happy 34th birthday. I have 2 questions that relate to self-learning. Well, thank you, Jim. As I get older, I really don't like to think about birthdays because I know I'm getting older. But number one, I was wondering if you could discuss the true believer more. What you said that people who achieve mainly individual success are more likely to join mass movements. Okay, and it's been a long time to be honest since I read The True Believer, but there was a section in that book, and if you've never read it, it's by Eric Hoffer, who I think he wrote a lot of books, but they just kind of repeat what The True Believer says. But basically, people who are really, really, really successful are most likely to finance mass movements. And why is that, right? And if I recall correctly, it's because people who are really, 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 really successful don't have any sort of real community to share their success, but at the same time, they want to feel important about themselves. And so what they do is they think by bringing about societal change, that's going to bring them happiness or something like that whatsoever. And it kind of contrasts this to like a situation where a person is poor, but everybody around them is poor. And in that situation, there's no mass movement. And so why is it that that person who's extremely successful is going to go fucking crazy and want to like build a, fund a mass movement to tear down society? Is I think as human beings, we were just meant to be tribal. We feel comfortable not being individually successful, but learning and growing together and being successful with others. And the problem with our society, our modern society, is that we put too much emphasis on the individual success, and it's looked down upon. Any sort of community oriented goals is really just looked down upon. And I know I'm just kind of putting my twist on it because it's been such a long time since I've read The True Believer. But he does give an example about how basically the very successful are the ones who are going to finance the mass movements along with the very poor, because the very poor have nothing to lose, and the very rich can't have a community because they just kind of resent, quote, regular people. So if you ever heard the saying that the globalists want to kill all of us because they see us as useless feeders, that's kind of that mentality where they think they're better than you, so they want nothing to do with you. But at the same time, they want to feel important on ourselves because it's in our DNA to want to help and serve others. But they've kind of twisted that logic and sort of convinced themselves that tearing down society is really what's best for us. But the reason why, they go insane, and that's just anybody in general, is because they have no community to share anything with. And so this is how they feel important about themselves. That's just kind of my take on it. And I got to kind of read what The True Believer says, but I think there was a point in my life where I was just obsessed with it because it just seemed like every single person I knew fit the profiles that were talked about in The True Believer. All right, question number 2. Based off my experiences, I noticed around 18 that being genuinely interested in something that doesn't pertain to getting a good grade or improving a resume is considered strange by most adults. What did your experience show about learning once someone is an adult? I think the reason why society is failing is because we just don't do things for the sake of doing things for our own genuine interest. It has to be because we're going to make money or it's going to look good on a resume. And I think, just looking at my own experience as a kid, for example, when I played video games, I never did it for the money. In fact, if I spent $100 at the arcade and that was my own money, that was like the best day ever because I lost money, but I enjoyed the experience. And I think that's what's just missing in society, where people just don't do things for the enjoyment of it. Or at least that was true when I was like in my teens. And, now that I've gotten older, at this stage of my life, I do find people once in a while who are passionate about what they do, but that's a rarity. Most people are just kind of phoning it in. They're not really trying that hard, or at least, they're not trying to what I think my standards would be. But I think, I shared that same disappointment that you're talking about when once I turn adult, it just feels like almost like high school 2.0, where I think the biggest disappointment in high school is just people taking AP classes and clubs and all that, but they don't really care about what they do. You know, they don't really care about it, and it's just like, dude, life is short. If we're gonna do something, why not like get good at it right now instead of just like doing something because quote, you know, it'll look good in my resume, or it's gonna be look good for a future job that I may or may not have, right? And that's just kind of the big problem with most people is they just don't do things for the sake of doing things, and they think you're weird because they've totally bought into the nonsense of society. And you know, I probably when I was like 18, I probably should just like bailed on society and gotten my own farm and then started my own company. And you know, I guess to summarize, I should have been a leader of my own cult, which I think I am. You know, the Ha-Man advice tribe that I have, the 2 to 5 followers. But seriously speaking, I really think that once I turned 18, that was a time to kind of, you know, fertilize my thoughts and ideas, and just kind of be confident in them and not look to others for inspiration, or not inspiration, to tell me what to do, and you know, have confidence in my own beliefs and ideas. And that's something I was definitely lacking when I was 18 or 19, because I was in that public school system and every single adult was just saying, well, if you do X, Y, and Z, then everything will be okay. And then I'm looking around and I'm thinking, what the fuck are you talking about? This is just a dumpster fire and nobody knows what the fuck they're doing. And of course, when you tell the truth, people don't like that. They really don't. Yeah, so that's kind of my thoughts for today. I guess you guys really don't. I don't know if you have any real questions, but it's just more like, please explain, which is cool. I'm willing to do that. But since I'm just kind of doing this off the top of my head, some of my thoughts are incoherent, but whatever. All right, have a great day, everybody. If you have any thoughts, comments down below, and we'll speak next time.